Sorry, 15, he'd get it right there and call that 266. He'd still need one more state. He'd still need to get to Wisconsin to get over the top. So you can see how critical Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, they all are to both candidates.
Maurice Dubois, thank you. Want to turn now to Cecilia Vega, because Cecilia, I know you did some reporting in Pennsylvania. What are we learning about what may be happening in the Keystone State?
Yeah, we're just back from a reporting trip there. Look, this is the Holy Grail. Margaret said it at the top of the show with its 19 electoral college votes. And I think, Nora, to understand the significance of Pennsylvania, all you got to do is look back to the final day of campaigning. Both candidates there, Donald Trump telling everybody, if we win Pennsylvania, we'll win this whole ball of wax. Kamala Harris ending her final rally on the steps of the famous Rocky Steps there. But look, Al Schmidt, the Secretary of State, told me we are probably not going to know the results from Pennsylvania tonight. Delay does not mean anything nefarious is happening. Pack your patience, you said at the top.
Thank you very much, Cecilia. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Todos estão de olho nisso.
Eu escolho o ativo. Eu escolho a fachada. Eu construo o plano e eu executo. Eu!
Não pode confiar em nenhum deles.
Expõe nossos programas. Expõe nossos oficiais, suas famílias. A sua família. Sinal verde. Vá pegá-la.
Comigo você pode estar bem informado. Em todos os momentos, com Band News ou Jornal da Band. Enquanto você faz um café. Enquanto você almoça. E também quando está treinando. Ou brincando com o seu cachorro. Bonito cachorrinho. Você também quer ver as notícias? New Brasil. Na Pluto TV. Novembro. O ano tá acabando, mas a Pluto TV não para. Temos as melhores séries policiais.
Solta a arma!
Premiações cheias de estrelas. O melhor futebol feminino. As lutas mais incríveis. E uma das sagas mais icônicas.
Nunca diga que eu não estava perto de você.
O ano termina, mas a diversão só tá começando.
Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
CBS Mornings Plus, clearly more news, more smart conversation.
More money-saving tips, more recipes.
More uplifting ways to get you on your way.
Plus, more sports, more weather.
Clearly, more CBS Mornings.
Plus.
Sunshine in day.
I'm Lindsay Reiser at the CBS Broadcast Center in New York with coverage of CBS News America Decides. Georgia played a pivotal role in the 2020 election. The Peach State has 16 electoral votes, and vote counting could extend beyond Election Day if margins are tight once again. CBS News congressional correspondent Nicole Killian is in Atlanta. Nicole, good evening. What are you watching for?
Well, we are watching the turnout here in Georgia. According to the Secretary of State, more than 800,000 votes were cast today, and he expects that to surpass the 1 million mark before all is said and done. That would be on top of 4 million votes that were cast in early voting, which was a record. So once again, we're seeing pretty high turnout rates here in Georgia. That being said, there have been a number of issues at polling locations across the state, particularly here around Metro Atlanta and counties like DeKalb, Gwinnett, and also Fulton County, where a number of bomb threats were called. And in fact, in Fulton County, there were as many as 32, according to local authorities. And because of that, some of those polling locations had to be swept. Some of the polling locations had to have their hours extended so that people could continue to vote in light of those disruptions. We are starting to see some results starting to trickle out from Fulton County and other locations. Of course, the race still too close to call, but we knew here in Georgia things may be razor thin, particularly because you'll recall that this was a state that President Biden flipped for the first time in some 30 years back in 2020. Former president lost by about 12,000 votes, but tonight, in terms of talking to Republican officials, they are feeling very good about how things are looking. They believe that their strength here in the state will really come from a lot of these rural counties outside of Atlanta, and also this focus that they have had in recent months on these low propensity voters, trying to turn them out. However, for the Harris campaign's part, they were really looking to build a multiracial coalition here in the state. Obviously, black voters are very critical to that dynamic, but so far they are also feeling very good about the turnout here in the state. Lindsay.
Nicole Killian, thank you so much. Coming up at the bottom of the hour, polls close in Arkansas. You're watching CBS News, America Decides.
Morning, 25 years of
Let's do it! Let's go! Let's do this! I can see clearly now that the rain is gone.
Superstar approaching, superstar approaching.
Just get your popcorn and get ready.
Come on, Julia.
Oh, no.
I will if you will.
You go, gal.
Yeah, boy!
Dollar Jill.
If you can't get into the market, it's okay. Renting is fine.
Box, oh, it's bad. Screw cap, oh, it's bad. It's not true.
We are making a wonderful lemony chicken.
Ooh, it's hot. That's good.
I wonder what Serena's doing. I wonder how Serena is feeling.
That's a really good question. No one's asked me that yet.
You're 70 years old? 70, yeah. I'm 21.
We'll see you 7 o'clock sharp.
Welcome back to CBS News election headquarters in New York. You are looking live at people counting votes in Fulton County, Georgia. Lots of transparency in the process. You can also see what's happening right now at the Harris and Trump campaign headquarters. It's 8:30 p.m. in the east, 5:30 p.m. in the west. Let's check in with the three battleground states where the polls are closed. In Georgia, CBS News characterizes this race as a toss-up. Look at this. Only 53% of the vote in, even though it's 8:30. You know, the Secretary of State had told us we were going to have more votes in. I'm going to check in with David Becker on that, what's happening. And we'll check in at the Magic Wall. Let's take a look at North Carolina, another important battleground state tonight. Again, it is early in the night, but look at this. It is a toss-up at this hour. New reporting coming in from North Carolina we want to share with you shortly. And then Pennsylvania, the electoral prize of the night. And remember, Pennsylvania takes a little longer to count, but these are the early numbers that are coming in, and CBS News rates this as a toss-up. But we are hearing some interesting things about long lines in Pennsylvania. Some polling places extended, some polling places not extended. We're going to dig into those numbers. Let me also show you these other results just coming in from other states, including one where the polls just closed. In Arkansas, CBS News projects Donald Trump will win in that state. Let's take a look at Missouri. CBS News projects Trump will win there as well. And just in from our data desk, in South Carolina, CBS News projects Trump will win also in that reliably red or Republican state. CBS News projects Kamala Harris will win the District of Columbia, where her election night headquarters are. No surprise there. And 3 electoral votes there. And then in the race for the all-important number of 270 electoral votes, Donald Trump is at 105. Kamala Harris has 27. at this hour. As I promised, the magic wall, more information. Major Garrett, Anthony Salvanto at our CBS News data desk. I'm getting texts from friends who say, dig into the wall. We want more information. So, gentlemen, take it away.
We will oblige. We want to start in Florida because, okay, it wasn't a battleground coming into this, but I'm going to tell you why we were able to call it. And that is that you see all these red counties here, in one after another, you've seen shifts even from Donald Trump's previous victory. So that consistency told you that he was going to win. But there's another part of this, maybe the most important part of this. Major, take it away from Miami.
Sometimes, Nora, there's a story in a state that's just a story in that state. And I want to bring everyone's attention to Miami-Dade County. Look at where things currently stand in Miami-Dade County with 80%. Let's compare that to where things finished in 2020. See how much farther ahead former President Trump is of what he was in 2020. Let's go back one more step, ladies and gentlemen, to 2016. Look at the transformation of this once solidly Democratic county, a place of highly concentrated Democratic support. One of the anchors to Democrats in Florida when it was a competitive state. The fact that it is competitive no longer flows through Miami-Dade. There's one other thing we want to show you about Florida writ large, and that is the phenomenon of ticket splitting. So in Florida, there is a right to abortion referenda. It's at 57% now. It needs a 60% threshold. Anthony, take it from there.
Well, what we're looking at is some in the Harris campaign thought maybe support for this measure might connect to support for Harris and maybe help bring up her vote numbers. It hasn't. Now, this needs 60% to pass. So we don't have a projection on that yet, but we do have it characterized as lean no, because as you can see, it's tracking below that 60%. Even with that majority, it has to get that 60% threshold. But that's your story, that big, big gap between Harris and the abortion referendum. Of course, she made that such a central part of her campaign, but it's not bearing out in the vote, Nora.
Let's go to North Carolina, Nora, because you asked for more data. We want to give you data. Anthony?
Okay, North Carolina, as you see, 14% in, so not a lot yet. But some of the tracking here already out of places like Raleigh-Durham, like around Charlotte, is going to be critical because what's going to happen is Democrats have to run up large margins in these counties. Major, show the history here.
Sure,
this is what we're going to be. This is what we're going to be looking for. Okay, when you get to these areas, you're going to have to see, and she's getting it now, right? But it's very, very early. You're going to have to see Kamala Harris run up the score, run up the margins, because what's going to happen is that Donald Trump, or at least our exit polls tell us and our projections tell us, is going to do very well in and around these rural areas. So that's how you break down North Carolina, but it still evens out to a toss-up.
Want to show the estimate?
You show the estimates to her. That's just Mecklenburg. That's just Mecklenburg. But I do want to show you this, too. Take a look at the ticket splitting in this, because this is important. So go to the ticket splitting, and here again, we have a story in differences, because here's Harris's current number, right? But you also saw Josh Stein win at 58%. And so at that point, he versus the 49% that we're getting for Harris right now, those differences telling you that some Republicans have gone over.
There's a Trump-Stein vote in North Carolina.
There's a bit of a Trump-Stein vote right there. Yeah, of course, that was a controversial race and one everybody was paying attention to.
Gentlemen, this is excellent information. Can we go back to Georgia and just see? I want to see where the outstanding vote is there. Of course, we have heard there's record voting. Not we knew in the early vote, but also today. So just want to get a sense is where is the outstanding vote right now?
I'm glad you asked, because here on this map, what you see is the circles represent the amount of outstanding vote, and the color represents what's projected or the past from those areas, blue for Democrats or red for Republicans, right? So if I zoom in here on these key counties we talked about all night where Democrats have to do well, Cobb, Fulton, a lot still outstanding from there. That's why one of the reasons you can't project the race. Right now, there are places, more rural areas, where you see, and also these outer suburbs.
Forsyth and Cherokee are very strong Trump counties.
Yeah, and there's still Republican vote out there, so we'll see exactly how that shapes up. But still more to come. That's why it's so close, but only half in, Nora.
All right, let's keep looking into those numbers in Georgia and North Carolina. So close at this hour. Thank you very much. I want to turn now to Face the Nation moderator Margaret Brennan. Margaret, we started this evening talking about, will there be a historic gender gap? Will there be the first female president of the United States? The first election since the overturning of Roe versus Wade and abortion on the ballot, reproductive rights in 10 states. Where does that stand at this hour?
Well, I want to zero in on Florida, which Anthony just highlighted for you, because that is the first place we are seeing the results of this referendum. 84% of that, 83% of that vote already in. It is lean no. Why? Because they haven't reached that supermajority threshold of 60%. Put that aside, what does that mean for the people of Florida? Well, the current law is that abortion is restricted after 6 weeks of pregnancy when a fetal heartbeat is often detected.
One of the most restrictive in the country.
One of the most restrictive in the country, particularly. You can get an abortion after 15 weeks if you can prove you were a victim of rape, of incest, or human trafficking. You got a hand in a police report, a court order, some proof that you were victimized. That's the only way you could get it after 6 weeks. The referendum asked, do voters want to change that and actually amend the Constitution to include the right to an abortion? And so far, we are at lean no, because they have not reached that supermajority. Now, Nora, this is so interesting, not just on the very practical, real-world implications of this for the women of the state. From the political level, we were talking about ticket splitting there between Major and Anthony. They were pointing that out. Vice President Harris has put at the center of her campaign the issue of women's reproductive health care. It doesn't necessarily, this would suggest, always break in her favor. And also what we saw here is, for the very first time in this country, when reproductive health care has been put to the voters in a state, it hasn't expanded access. 7 times so far, we have seen referendums in states on this issue, even in ruby red states where it was a surprise, even in Ohio, even Kansas.
Meaning it's always been a sure win for the Democratic Party.
Or at least to expand access. And so perhaps this suggests that ticket splitting. You do have Republican men and women voting here that aren't necessarily going to just then follow on.
But forgive me, I don't know this. In those other measures when they were on the ballot in 2022, though, did they require a 60% threshold?
That's a great question. Yeah. This is different. This is a much higher benchmark to get to that 60% threshold, the supermajority. It's a good point.
I mean, it's really interesting today, and I know you know all the details on this, and of course we're going to be checking in. We just don't have the data yet on Nevada and Arizona, those battleground states where there's also abortion measures. Right.
One final point on Florida. This is the state where Donald Trump is a resident. He cast a vote for this today, and he said he was going to vote no. So for the candidate who has, as Robert Costa pointed out, sort of changed publicly his position on what his view is on abortion, he went into the voting booth and he cast a vote. He said no, which would mean he has effectively then endorsed a 6-week restriction on access to abortion.
Interesting. Margaret Brennan, thank you. Exit poll data, I understand we've got some new information in.
We do. On this question of men and women voting, just to remind everyone, women since 1980 have tended to vote for the Democrat. Men have tended to vote for the Republican. Here's what the gender gap looks like in this election. We've got, overall, in terms of share of the vote, you've got 53% of the electorate is women, according to the emerging exit polls, 47% is men. Okay, how are they breaking up? Well, Kamala Harris has 55% of women to Donald Trump's 43% of women. So she's ahead by 12 points. But just for historical reference, in 2020, when the share was a little bit lower, 52% of the electorate, Joe Biden had a 15-point lead among women. So Joe Biden, according to the exit polls at this moment, as we've been talking about, they're tentative, had a better lead with women than Kamala Harris has at the moment. Let's just talk about men briefly, if we must. Donald Trump is up 53-44. So he's up by 9 points. In 2020, Donald Trump won men with 8 points. So Donald Trump, now, 8 and 9 is relatively basically even in terms of the exit polls, so you don't want to go too far on a single point gap. But essentially, Kamala Harris, based on these figures, is not doing as well as she needs to do to turn out the women's vote. If you'll tolerate a little bit more, let's look at the gender gap with men under 30. There was a lot of reporting about whether Donald Trump was going to do better with men under 30. Here, basically, it shows Harris 49, Trump 47. That's essentially even. But if we go back in history to 2020, men under 30 voted for Joe Biden 52% to Donald Trump's 41%. So historically, Biden got young men by 11 points.
So is this the so-called bro vote? The men under 30?
The bro vote is basically even, which is not great for Kamala Harris based on the traditional patterns of voting.
So I wonder, let's just take stock of where we are, because you have said that he's doing better among young men. He's the bro vote. She's underperforming with women.
Right.
If these exit polls are correct. And in Georgia and North Carolina, she's also underperforming Joe Biden among independents.
That's right. Georgia and Pennsylvania, she's even among independents in North Carolina. So that's right. And she's and if you want to just look at women under 30, Harris, it's 63-35. So she's doing very well. Of course, Biden was 67-32. So his margin was bigger with women under 30 than hers was as well.
And you know what has been so fascinating to watch in this campaign is how Kamala Harris herself has avoided using gender as something to campaign on. And I can't help but think about the difference between this campaign and Hillary Clinton.